The first thing I noticed after my heart quit on me was that the ceiling tiles were ugly in a very personal way. Not just ugly, judgmental. The kind of ugly that says, "So, this is where you ended up, huh?" I tried to lift my hand to flip the ceiling off, but my arm felt like it belonged to someone who had died with better posture than me. "Don't do that," a woman's voice said calmly. "You always rush things." That stopped me. Not because of the instruction. Because of the phrasing. "You always rush things." That sentence had followed me for 42 years, 3 marriages, 2 almost marriages, and 1 regrettable summer in Monaco. It belonged to my first wife. She used to say it while tightening the cap on toothpaste like punctuation. I turned my head. Slowly. Dignity is a fragile illusion when you're wearing a hospital gown that exposes your past and your future at the same time. The nurse was young, sharp-eyed, skin the color of café au lait, hair pulled back so tightly it looked like it had signed a contract. She smiled politely, not warmly, professionally, like someone who knew exactly how long people like me usually lasted. "You're awake, Mr. Carter," she said. I blinked. "That's impressive," I croaked. "I don't remember telling you my name." She checked a monitor. "You don't remember a lot of things right now." "I remember my money," I said. "That's usually enough." She smiled again. This time it was softer. "Familiar. Too familiar." "That's what you said in 1987, she replied. "Right before you left." My heart monitor protested. Loudly. I stared at her. She met my gaze without flinching, the way women do when they've already won an argument that hasn't started yet. "I've never been here before," I said. She adjusted my fore. "You've been here longer than you think." That was my first clue that this hospital wasn't just treating my heart. It was auditing my soul. Later, time to strange things when it smells like antiseptic. I met my doctor. Middle-aged white man. Calm voice. Impeccable manners. He shook my hand like he was measuring the weight of my past. "Good to see you conscious," he said. "Some people avoid that." I laughed despite myself. "I've been accused of many things, Doc. Cowardice was never one of them." He nodded thoughtfully. "No. You always preferred disappearing cleanly." The room went quiet in that very specific way rooms do when they know something you don't. I studied his face. The way he tilted his head. The tiny pause before he spoke. Like he was deciding whether honesty was worth the trouble. I'd seen that pause before. "You're very composed," I said slowly. "For a man telling a stranger how he handles conflict." He smiled. A crooked, knowing smile that hit me like an unpaid debt. "You taught me that," he said. "Before the board meeting. Before the signatures. Before you blamed me." I swallowed. Hard. Of course, he didn't look exactly like the man who betrayed me. That man had been younger. Hungrier. Worse haircut. But the manner, that careful calm, that almost sympathy, it was identical. Hospitals are supposed to save lives. This one was replaying mine. According to the chart, I was 76 years old. African-American. Self-made millionaire. Philanthropist. Investor. Colorful personal history. Someone had written in neat handwriting. That was polite. That was generous. By the end of the first day, I noticed patterns. A janitor whistled a song my second wife used to hum when she was lying. A volunteer brought me coffee exactly the way my mother used to. Too sweet, too strong, like she was afraid bitterness might win. An orderly told a joke I'd once stolen and told at a fundraiser in '92. He even paused at the punchline, waiting for applause that never came. And every time I asked how they knew these things, the answers slid away from me like silk sheets. "You mentioned it earlier. It's in your file. People talk. They always do. Just not usually in chorus." At night, when the machines softened into electronic breathing, I wondered if this was what dying felt like. Not darkness. Not light. Just memory with opinions. In a room across the hall, a man cried in his sleep. The nurse, my nurse, stood in the doorway listening, arms folded. For a moment her face changed. The professional mask slipped. She looked exactly like someone I once loved. Third person, if anyone had been watching, would have said this. The old man in the bed wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of recognition. I pressed the call button. When she came back, I asked, "Tell me something. Honestly." She raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous." "Who are you really?" She looked at me for a long second. Then she leaned in and said softly, "Someone who remembers how easy it was for you to forget." Then she straightened, smiled, and adjusted my blanket like none of that mattered. As she walked out, I realized something worse than the heart attack. This place wasn't haunted. It was curated. And someone had decided it was time I finally stayed long enough to listen. I woke up convinced I had died and been reincarnated as a man with opinions about oatmeal. It arrived on a tray at exactly 6:30 a.m., steaming, gray, and judgmental. No sugar on the side. No brown sugar either. Just a small cup of raisins placed dead center like a test. "This is not what I ordered," I said to the ceiling, because the ceiling and I were now in a committed relationship. "You ordered this every morning for 10 years," a voice replied from the doorway. I didn't have to look. I knew that voice. It carried the faintest hint of laughter, the kind that waits to see if you deserve it. I turned my head. There she was. Different face. Same posture. Same way of leaning on the doorframe like the world had already disappointed her, but she was willing to give it one more chance. "I don't eat oatmeal," I said. She checked the clipboard. "You said it kept you humble." I snorted. "That's not true. Nothing has ever kept me humble." She smiled. Wide this time. Real. That's what made it funny. Her name badge said Linda. That wasn't her name. That was my second wife's name. My favorite ex-wife, if one must rank such things, which one absolutely must. "I don't remember you," I said carefully. "That's new," she replied. "You used to remember me when it mattered least." I pushed the tray away. My heart monitor picked up speed like it enjoyed drama. "Listen," I said, lowering my voice. "I've had a heart attack. Medications. Trauma. People hallucinate." She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. The click sounded final. "Then hallucinate this," she said, and quoted me word for word. "If love ever becomes work, I'll outsource it." I closed my eyes. I had said that once. In a restaurant with linen napkins and a view of the Pacific. I said it like a joke. Linda hadn't laughed. She just nodded, like someone mentally canceling a subscription. When I opened my eyes again, she was gone. The oatmeal remained. Later that morning, the doctor returned. Same man. Same calm. Same betrayal in his bones. "We're going to run a few more tests," he said. "I don't consent to psychological experiments," I replied. "I've paid enough therapists to know a setup when I see one." He adjusted his glasses. "This isn't for your mind. This is for your memory." "My memory works fine." He nodded. "That's what worries us." He pulled up a chair. Sat down. "Doctors don't sit unless they plan to stay." "Do you believe people change?" he asked. "I believe people edit," I said. "Change implies effort." He smiled. "You once told me something similar. I tell a lot of men things before they disappoint me." "Yes," he said softly. "You do." For a moment, I saw him as he was back then. Standing in my office, nervous but brilliant, papers in hand, loyalty still untested. I trusted him. Then I'd crushed him when it became convenient. Then I'd told myself he deserved it. Funny how memory polishes our shoes and muddies everyone else's. "What is this place?" I asked. "A hospital," he said. "That's not an answer." He leaned back. "What do you think it is?" I thought of the nurse who spoke like my first wife. The volunteer who poured coffee like my mother. The way everyone here seemed fluent in my failures. "I think," I said slowly, "that someone has been studying me." "Yes," he agreed. "You have." That afternoon, a visitor arrived. No announcement. No knock. Just the sudden awareness that the room had shifted, like furniture rearranging itself around an old argument. She was older than the others. 70s, maybe. Gray hair pulled back neatly. Dressed too well for a casual visit. Too deliberately for coincidence. She stood at the foot of my bed and looked at me the way people look at houses they used to live in. "You got fat," she said. I laughed. Couldn't help it. "And you're still charming." "Still deflecting," she replied. "Some habits survive heart attacks." She pulled up a chair without asking. Sat close enough that I could smell her perfume. Same one. I bought it for her. Expensive. Lingering. Impossible to forget. "You look surprised," she said. "I am surprised," I admitted. "You don't usually come when I'm weak." "I didn't come for you," she said. "I came for closure." "That's optimistic." She crossed her legs. "Do you know why I left?" "You say that like there was one reason." She sighed. "You never listened when the answer wasn't flattering." I wanted to argue. I always did. But the words stayed put, heavy in my chest. Outside the window, the city went on breathing without me. Inside, My past had taken a number and was waiting patiently. Third person would note how strange it was. A man who owned buildings, companies, entire city blocks, now unable to control who sat beside his bed. She leaned forward. "Someone is doing this on purpose," she said quietly. My stomach tightened. "Doing what?" "Putting us in your path. One by one. Making sure you see us. Hear us." I swallowed. "Why?" She held my gaze. "Because you never stayed long enough to feel the damage." The machines hummed. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. Real laughter. Unbothered. I looked at her and, for the first time since waking up, felt something more dangerous than fear. Recognition. "This hospital," I said slowly, "isn't trying to save me." She stood up, smoothing her coat. "No," she agreed. "It's trying to finish you." And as she walked out, I realized the cruelest part. If this was punishment, it was tailored, which meant someone knew me well enough to design it. Sleep stopped being restful and started behaving like a courtroom recess. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain shuffled papers, cleared its throat, and called another witness. I dreamed I was walking through the hospital hallway, except the doors were labeled with years instead of room numbers. 1979, 1987, 2004. I didn't open them. I never opened doors when there was a chance someone might be waiting on the other side with expectations. When I woke up, my pulse was high and my humor was low. "Relax," the nurse said, checking the monitor. "Your heart likes drama, not panic." "That's unfortunate," I muttered. "So do I." She smirked. Not the first nurse. Not the oatmeal woman. This one was new, or at least new-shaped. Tall, late 30s. Calm eyes that had seen men lie to themselves and decided not to interrupt. "You don't recognize me," she said. "That's becoming a theme." "Good," she replied. "It means this might actually work." I stared at her. "You just said the quiet part out loud." She pulled the curtain slightly, blocking the hallway. The room felt smaller. Intentional. "My name is Evelyn," she said. "I'm part of a program." "Of course you are," I said. "There's always a program when rich men start confessing." She ignored that. Professionals often do. "This hospital participates in something experimental," she continued. "It's not about punishment. It's about integration." "Integration of what?" She met my eyes. "The parts of you that never met each other." I laughed. "Lady, I've spent my whole life keeping those parts apart. That's called success." She smiled faintly. "That's called avoidance." I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped, because suddenly I remembered signing something. Not a contract. A letter. Years ago. After a funeral I hadn't attended. A donation I'd made out of guilt and tax efficiency. I frowned. "I funded this place." "Yes," she said. "And I agreed to be what? A guinea pig." "A participant," she corrected. "Eventually." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Eventually when?" "When your heart failed," she said simply. I lay back, staring at the ceiling tiles again. Still ugly. Still judging. "So all of this," I said, gesturing weakly. "The staff. The performances." "They're not performances," she said. "They're reflections." "Reflections lie. Mirrors don't," she replied. That afternoon, they brought in a man to share my room. Hospitals love roommates. Misery enjoys company. He was around my age. Black. Well-dressed even in a gown. Like dignity was stitched into his bones. He nodded politely. "Name's Samuel," he said. "You look like a man who once charged too much for advice." I laughed. Harder than I had in days. "And you look like a man who paid it anyway." We shook hands. His grip was firm. Honest. For an hour, we talked about nothing important. Sports. Weather. The way coffee used to taste better when people smoked everywhere. Then he said, casually, "You broke my sister's heart." I turned slowly. "Excuse me?" He watched my face with unsettling patience. "You don't remember her. Most men don't remember the people they love briefly." "I didn't love her," I said automatically. He nodded. "That's what she said too. Right before she believed you anyway." My throat tightened. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" he asked. "Because she kept your letters. Every one. Even the one where you promised to leave your wife." I looked away. Third person would observe that the old millionaire had finally encountered something he couldn't buy his way out of. A living consequence who wasn't angry. Just accurate. Samuel leaned back. "You know what hurts the most?" I said nothing. She never hated you, he continued. She just waited. Thought time would fix what honesty didn't. That's not my fault, I said weakly. He shrugged. No, but it was your responsibility. That night, the hospital changed tone. The lights dimmed differently. The hallways felt closer, as if the building itself had leaned in. I dreamed I was young again, standing in an apartment doorway, suitcase in hand, explaining why leaving was actually kindness. I woke with tears I didn't remember authorizing. In the dark, I heard Samuel breathing steadily. You awake, he whispered. Yes. You ever wonder, he said, how many lives you'd have lived if you'd stayed? I stared at the ceiling. The tiles said nothing. They never did. I wonder, I admitted, how many lives I escaped. Silence settled between us. Heavy, honest. Somewhere far away, a machine beeped. Somewhere closer, a woman laughed softly. My mother's laugh, or maybe my own imagination finally giving up. As sleep crept back in, one thought refused to leave. This place wasn't just showing me my past. It was testing whether I could sit with it without running. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to escape. Morning arrived without asking my permission, which felt rude but on brand. Samuel was already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed, tying the strings of his gown like a man preparing for a duel with modesty. You snore, he said. I pay people not to tell me that, I replied. He smiled. Consider this pro bono. A nurse came in, heard the first one, the voice, the sentence. You always rush things. She checked our vitals with practiced efficiency. When she reached Samuel, her tone softened. Warmer. Human. When she reached me, it sharpened. You have visitors today, she said. I'd like to decline, I said. She didn't write anything down. You always do. Before I could ask who, she left. An hour later, the room filled. Not all at once. That would have been cruel. No, they arrived like chapters. One at a time, each pretending they weren't part of the same book. First came my son. I hadn't seen him in 12 years. Not in person. Not since the argument that ended with silence dressed up as maturity. He stood in the doorway, tall, composed, wearing a suit that fit him the way ambition fits men who learned early not to wait for approval. Dad, he said. I nodded. You look expensive. He smiled politely, not warmly. That hurt more than anger would have. I heard you had a heart attack. Minor inconvenience, I said. The heart and I are renegotiating terms. He stepped inside, looked around, took in the machines, the roommate, the smell of medicine and history. I didn't know you'd be here, he said. Neither did I, Samuel added dryly. My son glanced at him, then back at me. I didn't come to argue. That's new, I said. He exhaled. I came because the hospital called me. Of course it did. They said you asked for me, he continued. I opened my mouth, closed it. I don't remember doing that, I said. He studied my face carefully. Would you have wanted to? That question sat between us, heavy as a loaded checkbook. Before I could answer, the door opened again. She walked in like she owned the air. You don't forget your last great love. You just convince yourself you've upgraded. She was older now. Lines at the corners of her eyes. Confidence sharpened by time instead of dulled by it. She wore no perfume. She didn't need to. My son stiffened. Recognition sparked. You invited her too? He asked. I don't remember inviting anyone, I said. She smiled faintly, still outsourcing responsibility. She turned to my son. Hello. I'm the woman your father loved the most. Samuel choked on his water. My son blinked. That's a strange introduction. It's accurate, she said. And accuracy matters here. She looked at me then. Really looked. You look smaller, she said. Gravity, I replied. It catches up. You used to say that when things got real. I felt exposed. Like the hospital had stripped not just my clothes, but my scripts. Third person would notice the symmetry. The man in the bed, surrounded by the two people who knew exactly where his armor failed. This is a mistake, I said. Yes, she agreed. But it's a productive one. The nurse returned, carrying a clipboard like a verdict. Mr. Carter, she said. We're going to need you in the common room this afternoon. I'm not mobile, I said. You will be, she replied. Emotionally or otherwise. Samuel raised an eyebrow. Do they do this to everyone? No, the nurse said. Only to the ones who ran fastest. That afternoon, they wheeled me into a room with large windows and uncomfortable chairs. It looked like a support group had gone to law school. People were already there. 5 of them. I recognized every face. Not immediately, but my body did. Tight chest, dry mouth, the reflex to charm, then flee. They sat in a loose circle, pretending not to watch me. The nurse positioned my chair among them, then stepped back. "Today," she said calmly, "we're not treating symptoms." She looked directly at me. "We're treating patterns." The room fell silent. No machines, no beeping, just breath and memory. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else crossed their arms. I felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not pain, anticipation. For most of my life, I had been the man who left before the conversation got uncomfortable. Now the doors were closed, and everyone I had unfinished business with was already seated. The circle had the geometry of a trap. No one rushed to speak. That was the first mistake. Silence has always been my preferred battlefield. I clear my throat, make a joke, buy time. Old habits stretched, ready to perform. Then the nurse, judge, conductor, executioner sat down too. "We'll start simple," she said. "No interruptions, no corrections, no charm." I smiled reflexively. She didn't look at me. "The rule is honesty," she continued, "not accuracy. Those are different." The woman to my left spoke first. Early 40s. Elegant. The kind of composure you build after rebuilding yourself from scratch. "I loved him," she said, nodding toward me without meeting my eyes. "For 2 years. I thought we were building something private and real. Turned out I was just a quiet option." My mouth opened, closed. She went on. "He never lied outright. That was the impressive part. He just let me assume." I wanted to object. I had never promised her forever. I had promised care, attention, weekends in Napa. But then I remembered how carefully I'd chosen my words. How proud I'd been of that. The man across from me spoke next. Mid-50s. Banker posture. Tired eyes. "I lost my marriage because of him," he said calmly. "Not because of an affair. Because I watched how easily he walked away from people who loved him, and I copied him. Thought that was strength. That stung. Secondary damage always does." A younger woman followed. She didn't sit. She stood, arms crossed. "You told me I was too intense," she said. "Turns out I just wanted something that required you to stay." I laughed once. Sharp. Defensive. "That's not," I began. The nurse raised one finger. I shut up. Third person would notice how unnatural that was for me. My son sat at the edge of the circle, hands clasped, jaw tight. He hadn't spoken yet. That scared me more than anger ever could. Finally, she spoke again. "Mr. Carter," the nurse said, "what do you hear?" "I hear accusations," I replied. She nodded. "And I hear regret dressed up as wisdom." The room shifted. A few people bristled. She didn't. "And underneath?" she pressed. I swallowed. "I hear disappointment." She waited. "In me," I added quietly. That was the moment something cracked. Not dramatically, not cinematically. Just a small, internal sound. Like ice giving way. The woman I loved the most, the last great one, spoke then. "You never stayed long enough to be the villain," she said softly. "That was your genius. You left while people still missed you." I looked at her. I didn't want to hurt anyone. She smiled sadly. "Intent isn't a shield. It's an alibi." The session ended without applause or closure. They always do. Back in my room, I felt emptied out. Not lighter, just quieter. Samuel watched me lie back down. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I think I lost a class action lawsuit," I said. He nodded. "You listening now?" Against my will. That night, Evelyn returned. "You're progressing," she said. "Is that what this is?" She nodded. "Your heart attack forced you to stop running. We just removed the exits." I stared at the ceiling. "Why me?" She hesitated. That was new. "Because," she said carefully, "you asked for this once. In a way." I turned my head. "I did." She handed me a tablet. On it was a video. Old. Grainy. Me 10 years younger. Sitting in a study. Whiskey in hand. "I'm not a bad man," past me said. "But I think I might be a dangerous one. If there's ever a way to show me the truth, really show me, I'd want that. Even if I hate it." The video ended. I laughed softly. "I sound arrogant." "Yes," she agreed. But also afraid. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I wondered something radical. What if this place wasn't punishment? What if it was mercy, designed by someone who knew I'd never choose it consciously? The heart monitor slowed. Steady. Calm. In the dark, I felt it clearly. Not guilt. Readiness. For once in my life, I wasn't planning my exit. I was still here. And the hospital, patient and relentless, wasn't done with me yet. The next morning, the hospital gave me a gift. It let me be bored. No visitors. No revelations. No mirrors wearing human faces. Just the steady beep of the monitor and the distant clatter of carts in the hallway. I hadn't been alone with nothing to manage in decades. I didn't like it. That was how I knew it was working. Samuel was discharged before lunch. He packed slowly, deliberately, like a man who knew exactly what he was taking with him and what he was leaving behind. "You'll be fine," he said, standing at the foot of my bed. "You're finally uncomfortable. That's growth." "I don't recall paying for motivational speeches," I replied. He smiled. "You paid for worse." Before he left, he leaned in. "My sister forgave you years ago, just so you know." "That doesn't help," I said. "It's not supposed to," he replied and walked out. I stared at the empty bed across from me. It felt accusatory. That afternoon, the doctor returned with my charts. Real charts this time. Blood work. Imaging. Numbers that pretended to be objective. "Your heart is recovering well," he said. "Physically. And the rest?" I asked. He considered me. "Still under observation." I snorted. "That's a sentence I've heard my whole life." He sat down. Again with the sitting. "You know," he said, "people assume power protects them from consequences." "I never assumed that," I said. "I assumed I could handle the consequences." He nodded. "That's the lie." I looked at him sharply. "You didn't come here by accident," he continued. "You chose a hospital that could do more than keep you alive." "I chose the best," I said automatically. He smiled. "Exactly." That evening they moved me. Not to another ward. To another floor. The elevator ride was silent except for the soft hum and the nurse's shoes squeaking slightly, rhythmically, like a metronome measuring my patience. When the doors opened, the air felt different. Quieter. Thicker. This floor didn't smell like antiseptic. It smelled like old books and citrus polish. Memory again. The room they wheeled me into wasn't a room. It was a suite. Comfortable. Tasteful. Dangerous. In the center stood a table. On it, a stack of envelopes. Handwritten. My handwriting. "Absolutely not," I said. The nurse parked the chair and left without ceremony. I reached for the top envelope with a hand that had closed billion-dollar deals without shaking. This one shook. The letter was addressed to no one. Just a date. 30 years ago. I read. It was a goodbye I never sent. Written to a woman I had loved and abandoned in the same breath. Honest. Raw. Afraid. I didn't remember writing it. I remembered not sending it. Behind me, a voice spoke. "You wrote those when you couldn't sleep." I turned. Evelyn stood by the door. "I never mailed them," I said. "No," she replied. "You filed them away. Like emotions." I swallowed. "Why are they here?" She stepped closer. "Because this is the part you skipped. The part where you sit with what you felt before you edited it." I picked up another envelope. Another date. Another almost confession. "This is cruel," I said quietly. "Yes," she agreed. "And precise." I laughed once, hollow. "You people are very good at this." "We had an excellent case study," she said. I looked at her. "Me?" She shook her head. "Your father. That hit harder than anything so far. You don't talk about him," she continued. "But you built your whole life reacting to his absence. The money. The movement. The leaving first." I leaned back, exhausted. "So what?" I said. "This is the part where I cry and become a better man?" She studied me carefully. "No. This is the part where you choose whether you want to repair anything. Or just understand it." "Do I have time?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. "That," she said finally, "depends on how honest you can be while it still matters." That night I read every letter. I didn't like the man who wrote them. He was needy, afraid, tender. Everything I had trained myself not to be. I slept poorly. Dreamed of doors I didn't open and phones I didn't answer. In the morning, my son arrived again. No suit this time. Casual. Guard down just a little. "I read your letters," he said. I froze. You had no right. You left them where they could be found, he replied. That's a kind of permission. We sat in silence. I don't know how to forgive you, he said finally. I nodded. I don't know how to ask. That was the truest thing I'd said in years. Third person would say this. The old man had finally stopped negotiating outcomes and started telling the truth without knowing what it would cost. My heart monitor stayed steady. Somewhere in the building, a door opened. Not an exit. An invitation. I learned something important on the 7th day in the hospital. Nothing scares people like a man who finally stops defending himself. The morning started badly. That's how you know it's going somewhere honest. Evelyn arrived with no clipboard, no practiced calm. Just coffee. Black. Unsweetened. You used to drink it like this, she said, handing it to me. I used to drink a lot of things I shouldn't have, I replied. She didn't smile. Today isn't about memory, she said. It's about consequence. I took a sip, burned my tongue. Deserved it. They're giving you a choice, she continued. Not metaphorical. Not therapeutic. Real. I raised an eyebrow. Hospitals don't do choice. They do consent forms and fine print. She met my gaze. This one is yours alone. An hour later, they wheeled me into a different room. Smaller. No windows. One chair across from mine. She was already there. The woman I loved most. The one who left last. The only one who never asked me for money, promises, or explanations. She stood when she saw me. Hesitated. Sat back down. You look better, she said. That's the drugs, I replied. They dull my personality. She smiled despite herself. Same crack in the armor as always. I didn't agree to this, she said. They told me you asked. I did, I said. She folded her arms. Why? I took a breath. A real one. The kind I used to avoid because it slowed things down. Because this time, I said, I don't want to leave with the last word. Silence stretched. It always did with us. It was where the truth liked to pace. They want me to apologize, I added. I can do that. I'm very good with speeches. She tilted her head. That's not what scares me. What does? That you might finally mean it. I nodded. Fair. I looked at her hands. Older now. Still steady. I didn't love you safely, I said. I loved you like an exit strategy. Something beautiful I could walk away from while pretending that was maturity. Her jaw tightened. I told myself I was protecting you, I continued. From my chaos. From my ambition. From me. I looked up. The truth is, I was protecting my options. The words landed hard. Even on me. She stood abruptly, pacing once, then stopping. You ruined my sense of time, she said quietly. Do you know that? I spent years thinking I was early, or late, or too much. When really I was just waiting for a man who had already left. I nodded. I know. That surprised her. You know? She repeated. Yes, I said. Because that's exactly how my son feels. That cracked something open. She turned back to me. What do you want? I swallowed. I want to try, I said. Not romance. Not fixing the past. Just honesty without an escape hatch. And if it hurts? She asked. I'll stay, I said. That's the whole point. Another pause. This one sharper. You might die, she said. I smiled faintly. I might finally live honestly first. She studied me like a risky investment. One she knew better than anyone. I'm not here to save you, she said. I know, I replied. I'm here to stop abandoning people. She sat back down. Third person would note this. The millionaire didn't win her back. He didn't even ask to. He just stopped bargaining. Later that day, my son came. No nurses. No observers. He closed the door himself. I talked to them, he said. About you. And, I asked. They said you're changing. I smiled. That's generous. He didn't. I don't need you to be better, he said. I need you to be present. Even when it's awkward. Especially then. I nodded. I can do awkward. He exhaled. Saturday. I don't know how much time you have, he said. Neither do you. No, I agreed. But I know what I'm not doing with it anymore. He looked at me, really looked. Don't disappear, he said. I won't, I replied. Even if I want to. That night, the hospital changed again. Not quieter. Warmer. The machines still beeped, but softer, like they were listening instead of warning. Evelyn came one last time before midnight. You crossed the threshold, she said. Does that mean I pass? I asked. She smiled. It means the building stops chasing you. And then what? She hesitated. Then, she said, we see if your heart can handle the truth without breaking. I lay back, exhausted, honest, afraid in a new way. For the first time, I wasn't wondering how to get out. I was wondering how to stay. And somewhere deep in the walls of that strange, remembering hospital, something shifted. Not toward mercy, but toward a verdict that still needed one final chapter. They didn't wake me gently. No nurse whispering my name. No careful hand on my shoulder. The machine screamed first, sharp and offended. Like I'd broken a rule I hadn't read. Pain is honest. I'll give it that. It tore through my chest with none of the poetry people like to attach to near-death experiences. No tunnel. No light. Just the very clear sensation that my heart was tired of carrying everything I'd refused to. As they rushed me down the hallway, ceiling lights stuttering past like a bad edit, one absurd thought cut through the chaos. So this is what staying costs. Someone shouted numbers. Someone cursed. Someone squeezed my hand. Stay with us, a voice said. I wanted to answer. For once, I really am. Then everything went quiet. Not dark, quiet. I was standing in the hospital lobby, except it wasn't a lobby anymore. No desk, no signs, just space, open, waiting. Across from me stood a man I recognized immediately, though I hadn't seen him in 40 years. My father. He looked younger than I remembered. That annoyed me. You took your time, he said. Traffic, I replied automatically. He smiled. Same crooked smile I'd inherited and spent my life denying. You built everything I never could, he said. Money, control, distance. And you taught me how. I shot back. He nodded. I taught you how to leave. You perfected it. We stood there, two men shaped by absence, finally sharing the same room. I stayed away because I didn't know how to be enough, he said quietly. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. That's funny. I left because I was afraid I was. He looked at me then. Really looked. You don't get to fix it all, he said. You know that. I know, I replied. I just want to stop repeating it. He stepped aside. Behind him was a door. Not dramatic. No glow. Just a door, slightly open. You can go, he said. Or you can stay. I glanced back the way we'd come. What happens if I stay? He smiled sadly. You'll feel everything. I thought of my son's voice. Of the woman who didn't ask me to be better, just present. Of letters I'd written and never sent. Of oatmeal and judgmental ceiling tiles. I've had a lifetime of numb, I said. Let's try the other thing. The pain came rushing back like an unpaid debt. I woke up gasping, surrounded by light and movement and the smell of antiseptic. Hands everywhere. Voices overlapping. Pulses back. Stay with us, Mr. Carter. I'm trying, I croaked. Believe me, recovery was not cinematic. It was slow, humbling, boring in the way only survival can be. Days passed, then weeks. The hospital stopped testing me. No more surprise visitors. No carefully orchestrated encounters. Just physical therapy and bland food and time. One morning, Evelyn came to say goodbye. You're being discharged, she said. I nodded. Does that mean I pass? She smiled softly. There was no pass, just a question. And you answered it, she said, repeatedly. As I was wheeled out, I glanced back at the building. Ordinary now, just concrete and glass. It didn't follow me. My son drove me home. Awkward silence. Comfortable eventually. At a stoplight, he glanced over. You okay? I considered the question. My heart's damaged, I said. Permanently. He tensed. Dad. But, I continued, it finally knows what it's for. He smiled. Small. Real. Months later, I sat on my porch, writing a letter by hand. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Just to say I was here, and I wasn't leaving mid-sentence. Third person would say this. The old millionaire didn't become a saint. He didn't undo the past. He didn't win back every love he'd lost. What he did was simpler and much harder. He stayed.